The need for the EU goes back, in my opinion, to the Second World War and the disaster that occurred during it and following it. It took 13 years after that to actually form the European Union. And the need was not just for trade, but at that time for security and peace, so that there would be never war again between the European countries. But then it built into a huge trade and investment and flow of people.
The EU is a customs union. Ireland doesn't set its own tariffs, it doesn't set its own trade policy, which means that it can't negotiate a unilateral special deal with the UK. It's likely to lead to higher trade barriers between the UK and Ireland. There's going to be less competition, presumably within Ireland, fewer markets for Ireland to trade freely with, which would have an effect on Irish incomes. How big that effect is going to depend on the trade agreements that are signed between the UK and the EU, the terms on which the UK leaves.
My view would be, if we want to internationally cooperate, then we need some organisation and rule books to govern that. One of the advantages of the referendum debate is that people are now gone from just criticising the EU to realising that it may be the best option, that there's no attractive alternative. And it's striking in the British media in the last 3 or 4 weeks how so many people are realising that bad and all as the EU is the best option within which you cooperate internationally, not just on the economy or the flow of people, but on security, terrorism, climate change.
It's not clear how dramatic the effect is going to be, or we would expect there to be a negative effect. Deciding to leave the EU has uncertain effects, which means that you can put forward a case both for and against Brexit without contradicting the facts as we know them, because it's hard to construct this counterfactual in a rigorous way when we've got so few examples. In principle, if the UK left the EU, it could go to unilateral free trade. And if it does that, then actually leaving the EU might lead to more competition within the UK, which would lead, presumably, to higher productivity and higher incomes.
One of the difficulties with Brexit is we don't know what, if Britain leaves, what the situation will be. So at the very minimum, it's going to create massive uncertainty. In my opinion, the referendum should never have been called. But so be it, the referendum is there now. And if Britain leaves, I think there will be massive uncertainty for Britain, as report after report is showing.
So going to the case of unilateral free trade could lead to higher incomes, but that might impede negotiation of free trade agreements with other countries. So you can get the effects of leaving the EU on incomes depending on what happens, and two factors moving in different directions. More free trade within the UK, more competition, more productivity, but smaller markets since it's no longer free to trade with other countries.